Hey everyone, what's going on? I know it's been forever since I made a video, but as I said in the last video, I've been working on a book, and I really wanted to just finish that book before I started making videos again. And it's not completely done. It's probably going to be a few more months, and I did some things that I didn't want to do, but without putting like pictures such as this in the book, it really doesn't do it justice. It explains the story a lot better, and a person such as my mom or my dad, they have to see something like this to really understand how this book builds up and then understand how gematria works and, so on. So it'll probably just end up being an ebook. I'll probably have it for like $1 or something, like that. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But I really just wanted to have another piece of, something that goes along with what I'm talking about, because so many people around me, and just people in general, you could say you have YouTube videos, but I feel like they take it a little bit more serious if you have a book. And, who knows? Lots of people don't even read books anymore. So whatever, but I buckled down, I organized it, it's really close to being done. It might be, even the end of the year before I really get it done, but I'm going to try to start making videos again with my limited time anyway, I have 3 kids and I got to go to work every day, so lots of stuff going on. But what I want to talk about in this video is a bunch of stuff that I've missed over the last few months. I mean, I've been blogging a few things, but there is something major going on with the year 2017 and how it connects to the year 2020. Literally, if you go back to my videos from 2017, I was talking about the Jesuits, and of course, we've shown how the Jesuits are super synced up to coronavirus, and so on, right? The Jesuits were absolutely important, and they were important to the Las Vegas attack, and that was also the same day that O.J. Simpson got out of jail. That's why the Ford Bronco was supposed to be released this year on O.J. Simpson's birthday, and then they made a big old stink about it, whatever, and then they changed the date, and so on, because it was all synced up to the Jesuits. Jason Aldean even equals 201 in gematria. That's the big number we've been talking about with coronavirus and event 201 with the Jesuits. And a number of other things. The Price is Right guy reached out to me just before the Jesuit attack, or the Vegas attack, and he was from Las Vegas, and I got a phone call on the Jesuit anniversary from a Las Vegas phone number, and nobody was there, and so on. But the reason that I'm mentioning that is because earlier this year, on February 15th, we got the death of Drew Carey's ex-girlfriend named Amy Harwick. And the interesting thing about this was, just before she died, literally a lady from around this area that I live, that I know, who's named Amy, was on The Price is Right. She made The Price is Right, got up on the show and everything, right? And then Drew Carey's ex-girlfriend died less than a month later. And what was interesting about that was his girlfriend's birthday is May 20th. And May 20th was the same day that the guy who got the perfect showcase on The Price is Right that reached out to me the day before the Jesuit Vegas attack, that's his birthday too, May 20th, right? So there's something super important to what's going on with it. And Drew Carey's also important to this thing I'm going to talk about later with Mariah Carey. And Mariah Carey just saying she's going to release a new album on the date of 10/2, and Mariah Carey equals 102 in gematria, and Drew Carey equals 102 in gematria, and Jim Carey equals 102 in gematria, and also Helter Skelter theory equals 102 in gematria. Let me write Helter Skelter theory equals 102 in gematria. And if you go back to 2017, another major thing that I was talking about was the twin symbolism. I also talked about Donald Trump calling out the kneeling during the national anthem, and I mentioned how it was synced up to Charles Manson and his Helter Skelter theory about black people rising up. That's why Colin Kaepernick was taking a knee. That's why Marilyn Manson got injured by a gun prop that fell on him just days after he said that Columbine ruined his career, right? The gun prop, Columbine, so on. The JFK files were released less than a month later, and there was stories about Marilyn Monroe and Charles Manson family, in the media. And I kept saying, look, I've been talking about this since the beginning of 2017, how it's synced up to Charles Manson, and then Charles Manson died less than a month after all of that, on November 19th. Another reason that I knew that Charles Manson was important was because they had just announced that Justin Timberlake was going to be performing at the Super Bowl halftime show. And when I first noticed this pattern with Charles Manson, it was just after New Year's Eve of 2016, when Mariah Carey had this, she lip-synced on stage, and they made this big deal about Mariah Carey lip-singing and so on New Year's Eve. And as I was reading the article told us about, I mean, it was kind of weird that the article told us about Janet Jackson's boob being shown at the Super Bowl on the halftime show, where she was, with Justin Timberlake pulled her shirt and it showed her boob, right? And I was just kind of interested because the next day, or a couple days later, there was a story about Janet Jackson having a kid at the age of 50. And that was kind of a big deal because she was so old and had a kid. But right next to that story was a story about Charles Manson. Let me just pull it up here. There was a story about Charles Manson being hospitalized. And what I pointed out back then was that this was, the season that Colin Kaepernick had originally took a knee. And when Janet Jackson's boob got shown, she was singing songs off of her album called Rhythm Nation 1814. And she said that the year 1814, or that number in the title, was in reference to the year Francis Scott Key wrote the national anthem at the Battle of Baltimore, 1814. And I started thinking, Charles Manson has the Helter Skelter theory about black people rising up. And think about Colin Kaepernick taking a knee and so on. And I knew there was some type of narrative going on with that. Also, the first time Charles Manson ever mentioned Helter Skelter just so happened to be on New Year's Eve. And then Mariah Carey had messed up on New Year's Eve. So when they announced that Justin Timberlake was doing the halftime show, I said, look at this, it's going to be synced up to that. And what was even funnier is the year after the Janet Jackson boob thing, they decided to have Paul McCartney do the halftime show at the next Super Bowl. And Paul McCartney is the guy who wrote the song Helter Skelter. And he also wrote the song called Blackbird, and that is the song that Charles Manson said is telling black people to rise up, right? And then, who was in the Super Bowl that year? The Atlanta Falcons lost to the New England Patriots. If you go and look up the Atlanta Falcons' old logo, it is a black bird, right? The other team is Baltimore that has a black bird. And Baltimore is where the national anthem was written, right? At the Battle of Baltimore. 1814, right? You see how this narrative is put together. So then when you add that with Marilyn Manson being in the news, and Marilyn Manson is named after Marilyn Monroe and Charles Manson, and then we get a story about JFK, and we also had a story about never released photos of Marilyn Monroe, and Marilyn Monroe is also the first person to be the centerfold in Playboy, and Hugh Hefner had just died on the Jesuit anniversary, right? So I just knew that there was a narrative, again, with Charles Manson, and then Charles Manson ends up dying on November 19th, and so on. And another thing I talked about in 2017 was the Houston Rockets, and in a little bit I'm going to show you how the Houston Rockets are just absolutely synced up to this Charles Manson narrative. And whether the Rockets go on to win the NBA Finals, it really doesn't make a difference to me, but they are showing me this Charles Manson narrative. They were also synced up to a space theme that I talked about, and so on. So I know that it's just absolutely synced to the year 2020. And another interesting thing about the year 2020 is that this year we just had the 51st anniversary of the moon landing, right? And the word moon equals 51. That's why we just had the Elon Musk thing, the Elon Musk launch with the astronaut. They had to delay it, and they delayed it until it was 51 days before the 51st anniversary of the moon landing, and so on. The word conspiracy equals 51, Area 51, JFK and Francis Bacon equals 51, 9/11 equals 51. A lot of things that have to do with conspiracy equal 51, right? And this is important to Charles Manson, too, because the famous Tate murders that happened with Charles Manson, they happened on August 9th of 1969, which was literally just after the moon landing, right? The moon landing that happened in 1969. It's also interesting to point out that the moon landing happened a span of 21 days before the Tate murders. Look at the word moon. Moon equals 21 as well. So anyway, in 2019, on the date of November 12th, that day was really, really important to this NBA narrative. It's also Charles Manson's birthday. It's the day that Disney Plus launched. It's also Russell Westbrook of the Houston Rockets' birthday. And it's also the day that the media announced that Colin Kaepernick was going to get another workout with the NFL, right? And on this same day, we just so happened to get a story about Roman Polanski in the mainstream media. So Roman Polanski in the mainstream media, the same day that they announced that Colin Kaepernick is going to get this workout, right? And Roman Polanski, if you don't know, his wife is Sharon Tate, or was Sharon Tate, and she's the one, or one of the people who got murdered on August 9th, 1969 by the Charles Manson family, right? So his wife got murdered. I should note in 2017 as well, there was a whole bunch of other stuff before Charles Manson died, such as a Stand By Me theme, right? Think about Stand By Me and kneeling, and I talked about how it was important to the Family Guy episode where Stewie says that he's trapped in Kevin Spacey's basement. And if you read about that episode, it says they were originally going to say Roman Polanski's basement, but then they changed it to Kevin Spacey, right? But once again, Roman Polanski is the guy whose wife got murdered by the Charles Manson family. I think that same episode was the one where the family travels and they're like the Partridge Family or whatever. And I talked about how it was important to the Partridge Family. And then David Cassidy of the Partridge Family died like right around the same time that Charles Manson died, like a week after or so. You know, a week or so after I talked about how it was important to the Partridge Family. But anyway, I guess I just wanted to show you that, you know, once again, it was connected to Colin Kaepernick kneeling and so on, and connected to Charles Manson. A big piece that I left out in the beginning of this, and I don't know why I'm just now talking about it, but I've also been talking about Charles Manson and Helter Skelter being important to the year 2020 since about 2017, because Charles Manson had a song that he recorded with Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys. And then Dennis Wilson of the Beach Boys changed the name of it and they added it to the Beach Boys album called 2020, right? And that song was called, the Charles Manson, I'm trying to think, the Beach Boys called it Never Learn Not to Love. That equals 261 in gematria. And that's an interesting number because these Francis Bacon ciphers that I've been talking a whole lot about since last year and how they're important to the pig narrative because it was the Chinese pig year. Think about Francis Bacon. And it was important to Slipknot, who released an album on the date of August 9th last year. And much more. But the Slipknot member Paul Gray, who's known as the Pig, he died by gematria, and it was all synced up to their song called Gematria, the Killing Name, which I will eventually elaborate on at the end of the video here, but think about the Tate murders and so on, and they wrote Pig in blood, right? And it was in reference to the Beatles song called Piggies, and a lot more. The pig narrative that I was talking about last year was important, but in these Francis Bacon ciphers, if you write out Charles Manson, it just so happens to equal 261. And if you write out Colin Kaepernick's full name, Colin Rand Kaepernick, it just so happens to equal 261. Interesting, too, in these other ciphers here, if you write out Russell Westbrook III, Russell Westbrook III, his name equals 261. And the NBA resumed, if you look up the NBA, it resumed in Orlando, Florida on the date of 7/30, which I think I pulled it up here somewhere. Just so happens to be 261 days after Russell Westbrook's birthday. It's in Orlando at Walt Disney World. Disney Plus launched on this day. It's also Charles Manson's birthday. Then Russell Westbrook gets injured and so on. But the interesting thing about it is that James Harden, the other Houston Rockets player, that's, the other star of the Houston Rockets, look at his birthday is August 26th. That is the day that Colin Kaepernick took a knee, right? What are the odds of that, right? And look at James Harden equals in gematria and these Francis Bacon ciphers. James Harden, he just so happens to equal 194. Look what Charles Manson equals. He also equals 194. He also equals 282. And believe it or not, the NBA, the actual season began on 10/22 last year. And then it resumed again 282 days later. And even further, if you go to the date that Donald Trump called out the kneeling in the NFL, 9/23/2017, it's to the George Floyd thing, 5/25/2020. It just so happens to be 2 years, 8 months, and 2 days. 282, the Charles Manson thing, right? Trump called out the NFL before George Floyd, and George Floyd, I know for a fact, is connected to this because, look, LeBron James is one of the main guys who shared this, right? George Floyd's neck got kneeled on, and he said, well, this is why Colin Kaepernick is taking a knee, right? And, of course, this happened on the 146th day of the year. Colin Kaepernick equals 146, and Colin Rand Kaepernick equals 93, like Minneapolis, Minnesota, and it's located on like 93 degrees north, I think, and George Floyd died 93 days before the day that Colin Kaepernick originally took a knee. That's why the Rayshard Brooks thing was important to Wendy's, and the Cops TV show got canceled, and the Cops shooting in Omaha, Nebraska that I talked about in the last video, that happened on the same day that Colin Kaepernick took a knee. The lady who filmed this George Floyd video, her name equals 93. The word Neil in Francis Bacon equals 93. And what's interesting about LeBron James doing this, or making this and being important to this, look at LeBron James in the Francis Bacon ciphers. LeBron James, 261. If you go back to what I was talking about in 2017 with the Houston Rockets, it was synced up to Isaiah Thomas and his sister China dying in a car crash and a bunch more, but he used to play for the Sacramento Kings, and it was important to the Kings stuff. So that there is something pretty interesting with this. If the Rockets don't win, it's very interesting how it's synced up to the Los Angeles Lakers as well. And before I even move on, Orlando, Florida, just so happens to be very important to both of these teams. Orlando was the Houston Rockets last won the NBA Finals in 1995 over Shaquille O'Neal's Orlando Magic team, right? And think about it. Shaquille O'Neal, Dwight Howard joined the Lakers again. Dwight Howard used to play for the Orlando Magic, and then he came to the Lakers, and Kobe tore his Achilles. And, you can watch my Kobe video and how that synced up, and how I even talked about how Dwight Howard was important to that narrative, and then he signed on Kobe Bryant's birthday this year, and so on. But Dwight Howard was from Orlando, and I can't remember what year it was, but the year that Magic Johnson resigned, the Lakers then signed the coach Frank Vogel, who's the coach right now, and he's the former coach of the Orlando Magic. So both of these two teams have a big connection to the Orlando Magic. Even Kobe Bryant won his first championship without Shaquille O'Neal in 2009 against Dwight Howard's Orlando Magic team, and they even called it the Walt Disney series because of the connection to Orlando. Anyway, let's look more at the George Floyd narrative here and how it syncs up to Charles Manson and the year 2020 and the Helter Skelter theory and so on, right? If you read out Helter Skelter theory and these Francis Bacon ciphers, it just so happens to equal 525. And what day did George Floyd die on? He died on the date of 5/25. And oddly enough, if you go from 5/25 to the day that Charles Manson died, it just so happens to be 5 months and 25 days. I'll explain a little bit more later on because I want to talk about some synchronicity stuff and so on with Mariah Carey and so on, but recently we just had that Canon Hinnant story in the news that everybody was talking about how they didn't talk about that story, like the George Floyd story and so on. Well, if you look up Canon Hinnant, notice that he turned 5 years old 25 days before 5/25. So 5 years old, 25 days before George Floyd died on 5/25. And notice he died on August 9th, right? The anniversary of the Tate murders. He also died 102 days before his birthday. And remember, Helter Skelter theory also equals 102. Helter Skelter theory equals 102. Also, the super N-word equals 102. Also, the word slavery equals 102. And the Civil War began on the 102nd day of the year. And much, much more. I'll type in Mariah Carey just so you can see. Mariah Carey also equals 102, and she's releasing a new album on the date of 10/2. What's even funnier is that in July this year, I even talked about Mariah Carey being important to this narrative because her ex-husband, Nick Cannon, I always mix them guys up. I even wrote that on this blog. How I always mix up Nick Cannon and Nick Young. And there's something to do with, they seem like twins to me, right? And the twin narrative is really big. When George Floyd died, he died in the Twin Cities. He died during the time of Gemini, which is the twins. He also, they also said that NBA player Steven Jackson was his twin and so on, right? Even though they weren't really twins, they just looked a lot alike and so on. And that's how I figured out the whole Wendy's narrative was because in 2017, I was talking about this major twin theme going on, and it was connected to none other than the number 261, right? And, for example, I had a band gig, the very first ever band gig I had with the band that I'm in now. It was on the 261st day of the year. We practiced at a place it was on 144th Street. If you're at 144 in his words, it equals 261. It was on Nelson's Creek Drive, that equals 261. It was at my drummer's house. My drummer's name equaled 261. And then we randomly played a show, our first show ever, on the 261st day of the year. And it was at the Down Under Lounge that equals 261 in Gematria. And I stopped at Wendy's before that show because I was hungry, hadn't ate all day, and had to work and so on. And I got a couple things off the dollar menu, and it came to $2.61. And then I realized that the owner of Wendy's is named Dave Thomas. When you look up the word Thomas means twins. And that same Wendy's was the one that got shot up, and the cameraman on the TV show Cops died. And that, that was on August 26th, the day that Colin Kaepernick knelt. That's how I knew that Wendy's was important after they canceled the show Cops. And then we got the Rayshard Brooks shooting right after the George Floyd shooting, and so on. It was all synced up to this number 261. Synced up to umbrella symbolism that I don't want to get off topic with, but I mentioned how the Penguin in the movie Batman, he uses the umbrella, right, as a weapon and so on. And I talked about this back when Pop Smoke died, and he had that song, Christopher Walking, and it was talking about, a spoof on Christopher Walken, the guy who's in Batman Returns, the one that has Penguin, the one with Danny DeVito where he's Penguin and he uses the umbrella. And I said there's something important to that because Danny DeVito, who plays Penguin, he's also in the movie called Twins with Arnold Schwarzenegger. And then on July 13th, we got the death of one of these ladies from the movie Twins, right? Kelly Preston. She's the actress of the movie Twins, and she died, right? So, I know that it's important. There's this important narrative. And I'm bringing all of this up because when Nick Cannon got fired, I mentioned how there was something important to him being married to Mariah Carey because earlier this year, let me just type out. Let me find one where go back here. Mariah Carey. And I knew this was important just before 2020, yet again, because Mariah Carey was in the news 2 times. Let me find it here. In December. And Nick Cannon was also in the news around this time too, because Nick Cannon had made a a diss video to Eminem in December of 2019. Remember Eminem released that song where he talked about the album where he talked about the Manchester arena bombing, right? The same day that Mac Miller had his posthumous album released, and then Mac Miller was the ex-boyfriend of Ariana Grande, who the Manchester arena bombing happened in 2017, 132 days before the Vegas attack, and the word Catholic Church equals 132, and so on. But Nick Cannon was important to this time, but Mariah Carey was in the news for her All I Want for Christmas hit going #1 for the first time ever. And let me find it here. It was 102 days before her birthday that the story came out. 102 days. Now she's releasing a new album on 10/2. Her name equals 102. I even pointed out Nick Cannon, right? And how he's a lip sync thing with JoJo Siwa, whose name equals 102. And I'll show you why that's important in a little bit. But, just talking about all this stuff, how it's important. Then a few days later, we got another story about Mariah Carey and celebrities paying tribute to Mariah Carey by doing a lip sync video. And I thought it was like making fun of her 2016 deal, but really they were just doing a tribute to Mariah Carey and they were lip singing one of her songs, right? All these celebrities doing it. So I was like, look at this. This is how I first discovered the Charles Manson narrative. This is right before the year 2020. Helter Skelter is all about, it's been important to the year 2020 and the Beach Boys stealing Charles Manson's song that's, connected to the year 2020. So I knew Mariah Carey was important. And then when Nick Cannon got fired from CBS, I knew that that was somehow important. And when you look up Nick Cannon, he just so happens to have twins with Mariah Carey. Let's see if I put it in here. Nick Cannon has twins with Mariah Carey, and they named them Monroe and Moroccan. And named after Marilyn Monroe. Think about Charles Manson, Marilyn Manson being named after Charles Manson and Marilyn Monroe, and so on. What are the odds of that? And, if you go and look up their twins' birthdays. Where did I type Cannon Hennon at? I'll find it really quick. Cannon Hennon. Cannon Hennon's birthday just so happens to be the same day that these guys' twins were born. April 30th, 2008. Right, so 5 months and 25 days before George. Their birthday's 25 days before 5/25. And then Cannon Hennant, think about Nick Cannon and Cannon Hennant, who turned 5 years old 25 days before 5/25. And the reason I'm bringing all this up is because Mariah Carey's new album is going to release 5 months and 25 days before her next birthday. To go even further with what I'm talking about, let's look at Nick Cannon and these Francis Bacon ciphers. Nick Cannon equals 194. Just like how Charles Manson equals 194. And another thing that was really interesting with this Nick Cannon thing is I had a whole bunch of synchronicity. And I talk about this all the time, but it's verifying what I'm talking about even more. But a few days before I documented about Nick Young, I was at work, and this older guy that I work with was telling me about how the movie Children of the Corn, the scary movie from 1984, it was filmed in Whiting, Iowa. Even though the setting in the movie says Gatlin, Nebraska, it was actually filmed in Whiting, Iowa. And I knew Whiting was somewhere in this vicinity, but I didn't know exactly where it was. And like a couple days after that, my girlfriend wanted to go to the casino or something, and we usually go to the one called Blackbird Bend if we go to the casino, right? Blackbird, think about Charles Manson for one. I never even put this together until just a few days ago either, but Blackbird Bend Casino in Ottawa. I was like, Charles Manson, crazy, but you go a little bit past this one up the interstate, and it's in Sloan, Iowa. And on the way there, I noticed that like the exit or so before Sloan, Iowa, just so happens to be Whiting, Iowa. And I was like, I never knew that town was here. I didn't know that it was on the way to this casino. And I started telling my girlfriend about how the guy at work said that the Children of the Corn was filmed there. And then we talked about how we were going to watch that movie one night again, and then we both fell asleep or something. We didn't watch the movie, and so on. And we were going to watch it again that night when we got back to the casino, but then we were both too tired, or she went to bed, or she had to work or something. So we never ended up watching it. And anyway, when I was looking up Nick Cannon, it's interesting because Nick Young is like a former Laker too, but I was looking up Nick Cannon, and I noticed that it said that his first mixtape, let me find it here, was called Child of the Corn. And I was like, well, that's pretty interesting, Child of the Corn. And I just learned about Children of the Corn, and then we drive by the exit where Children of the Corn was filmed, and I even documented how I think there's something important to the band Corn, because they used to be one of my favorite bands way back when, and there's something important to that. And then a few days after this, the band Corn made the remake of The Devil Went Down to Georgia, right? Remember how Charlie Daniels had just died, and he has the song The Devil Went Down to Georgia, the same day they declared an emergency in Georgia and so on. But the band Corn, right? Children of the Corn, the band Corn. The band Corn is also from Bakersfield, California, and look up Charles Manson here. I just want to show you. The band Corn is from Bakersfield, California. Look where Charles Manson died. Bakersfield, California. Anyway, a few days after this, I was over at my mom's house, and we were talking about, I don't even know what I was talking about. I was telling her about Children of the Corn or something, the synchronicity I had with Children of the Corn, and my daughter was sitting there, and she stopped, and she goes, wait, Children of the Corn? And I go, yeah, like an old movie a scary movie about these children that murder people. And my daughter was like, my teacher was in that movie. And I was like, what? And lo and behold, man, my daughter's third grade teacher is like 45 or 6 years old, and she was an extra in the movie Children of the Corn. And I was like, what are the odds? She's from the area of Whiting. She grew up there. But what's even more interesting is that my daughter's teacher, I work with her son, who's like a junior or so in high school. He just so happens to be a twin. Like, what are the odds of that? Her son is a twin. She's in the movie Children of the Corn. And look at Children of the Corn equals. Just point it out really quick. Charles Manson equals 282. Look at Children of the Corn. Well, it's got to be capitalized. What? Oh, maybe it's in maybe it's in the regular one. Hold on. Children of the Corn. Yeah, equals 282. Just like Charles Manson. And it also came out in the year 84. And, Children of the Corn equals 84. I can't even remember what else I wrote in here. We'll look at it really quick. The word corn equals 84. Children of the Corn equals 84. It came out in the year 84. Nick Cannon's birthday is on 10/8, the day that leaves 84 days in the year. But let's look at the date of 10/8 in the year 2020. October 8th. I bet it syncs up. Look at that. October 8th, Nick Cannon's birthday. The 282nd day of the year in 2020. It's like, what are the odds of this? Like, it syncs up too ridiculous. And anyway, so I'm kind of rambling here, but what was it? It was like the next day after blogging about Nick Cannon. If I can find it here. I documented this story about Dwight Howard not wearing his mask, and James Harden, he wore this thin blue line mask. And there's also a story of, I can't remember what it was. There was a Rockets player, and then number 22 of the Kings got in trouble for breaking the quarantine rules and so on, right? And then Dwight Howard was in the news for getting snitched on for not wearing a mask. And really, how does this even make sense in the NBA anyway? It's just like testing a tiger for fucking coronavirus. How does it even make any sense? You know, they don't even have enough tests to test humans, but then they go ahead and test a tiger right after I talk about how there's a tiger narrative and so on. But, you know, maybe I'm wrong, but they went to the NBA bubble and they have to be quarantined and everything and they be tested and they don't have coronavirus in this bubble and they can't leave the bubble. But you know, the coaches and everybody, they gotta wear masks while they're there. And they gotta hold the microphone 6 feet away and everything else. If nobody has it, and nobody can leave, then why do you have to wear a mask still? It doesn't even make any sense. But maybe I'm mistaken. Maybe somehow somebody can leave or whatever. But it just doesn't seem to make any sense. If that's what it is, they're quarantined, nobody can leave, so odd. How does that even make any sense? Why do you gotta still wear a mask? Because it's programming, you know? I should point out, too, you know, think about it, the bubble, right, you know, being like Bubble Boy and so on, but the word bubble equals 44. So does James Harden. Russell Westbrook, they announced that he had coronavirus 44 days before James Harden's birthday. Rockets equal 44 in gematria. And the Rockets finished with a record of 44 and 28 in the regular season. Look at that, Rockets equal 44. The Rockets equal 28, so something pretty interesting. They're playing the Oklahoma City Thunder, who had 44 regular season wins as well, I believe. You know, and then it was synced up to Chris Paul, who got traded to Oklahoma City for Russell Westbrook, and then James Harden used to play for Oklahoma City too. So, big narrative there, but back with the Children of the Corn thing. So, I'm documenting about all this stuff. You know, it's always coded by the numbers and so on. But, can't remember. So, as I was writing up this blog post, I went and left this comment on Zach's blog, because I don't think he noticed that Walt Disney World equals 201, and then Walt Disney's real name equals 201 in gematria. And I was just pointing out all the stuff with Russell Westbrook, like, you know, Disney equals 31, Houston equals 31, Russell Westbrook's 31st birthday was on the date that Disney Plus launched. And today now, the game today, August 26th, the anniversary of Colin Kaepernick taking a knee, that just happens to be James Harden's 31st birthday, right? So, if any year the Rockets are going to win the NBA Finals, it seems like this year would be the year. Synced up to Houston, right? Houston 31. Their two-star players are going to be 31 years old. It's in, you know, the area of Disney. Disney equals 31. They're synced up to this Disney stuff. So I'm anxious to see if Russell Westbrook comes back for the game tonight or something like that. But we will see what goes on with it. But as I was writing this up, I heard the TV say Charles Manson. I was like, what in the world? You know? And it was Family Guy. I stood up to go pee or something, and I looked at the TV, and I heard Peter Griffin say something about Charles Manson, and then I look at the TV, and it has Charles Manson on the TV. And then a little bit later, I was sitting back down and writing some more, whatever, and another episode of Family Guy came on, and my girlfriend was sleeping. She just turned on whatever channel it was, and it had Family Guy. And it was one about Lois having Stewie, and she's like, oh my god, is it twins? And it's just so random. I just randomly looked up there. And then I was like, what in the world? And then a little bit later, I stopped again at just a random time, and I was thinking about something. I looked at the TV, and I hear Peter go, holy crap, it's the Children of the Corn. Right? So, all on the same night. Charles Manson's on the... I have synchronicity with Charles Manson, you know, on Family Guy. Then she talks about twins. And then I have synchronicity with Children of the Corn. And it wasn't really Children of the Corn, it was the band Hanson, and Peter was joking that it was Children of the Corn. So, I really don't know. This is absolutely crazy. So I figured I'd look up Children of the Corn. Maybe there's a new movie coming out or something. And the last one that you could click on is August 30th, 2011. So I was just like, I'll click on that one. That's the newest one you can click on, and so on. And I go and I'm reading the plot. Literally second line in the plot. A strange Charles Manson-like character, right? Just what are the odds? And I pointed out all this stuff. Children of the Corn, Manson family, Charles Manson, all equal 282. This stuff's important to Slipknot, the Iowa State Fair that I talked about last year. How Slipknot was important to Charles Manson, and because they released their album on Charles Manson's birthday, or the anniversary of the Tate murders. The next day they played at the Iowa State Fair for the first time, which is where Donald Trump said that he was Batman in a helicopter in 2015. And that Batman narrative is important to the moon, and so on, right? The moon landing happened on the same day as the Batman shooting in 2012, and a number of other things. But Iowa State Fair, Herbert Clark Hoover, the only president from Iowa, his name equals 282. I think his birthday was August 10th, too, the same day that Slipknot played at the Iowa State Fair. Herbert Hoover is also the president to sign into Congress the Star-Spangled Banner as the official national anthem, which syncs up to the kneeling narrative. And I'll get to that here pretty soon, but it's interesting too, when the Vegas attack happened. On my blog in 2017, I even pointed out how, it was important to Walt Disney World. So, because Stephen Paddock, the guy who supposedly shot at Mandalay Bay and so on, which, by the way, too, remember how I said sorry to get off topic, but Mike Tyson is going to be fighting again, right? He's going to be fighting Roy Jones Jr., and it was all about the number 51 originally. But let me find this really quick. Well, whatever. It's all about the number 51. And if you look up Mike Tyson's 51st fight, he fought, it was either in Mandalay Bay or it was at the Manchester Arena. Something like that. I can't remember which one it was, but let me just pull it up really quick. Hell. But I'm just pointing out the Las Vegas attack, it was synced up to Walt Disney World, and Stephen Paddock's brother, who was from Orlando, and, Walt Disney World actually was created on 10/1, which is the same day as the Las Vegas shooting, the Harvest Festival, the Harvest 91 Festival on the day leaving 91 days in the year, rockets equal 91, space equals 91, asteroid 91, Apollo 91, the space race came to an end in 1991, or not necessarily the space race, but the Cold War came to an end in 91, right? But, it has associations to the space race, but look at Mike Tyson here. Find it here. So, they announced Mike Tyson was fighting, and they announced it 51 days before the fight was originally supposed to take place. I remember seeing an article that they moved it to around Thanksgiving, which is even more interesting when you've followed what I've talked about for a number of years, but, with the film Rocky and Sylvester Stallone, and Sylvester Stallone's important to the tiger theme that's important to this year. He might bite the bullet or whatever. He might die in 2022, which is the year of the tiger, and, it's super important. Because, I can't remember, I think he'll be 76 years old on 7/6 that year, and the word tiger equals 76, and so on. And the character of Rocky will be 76 when that tiger year begins, and so on. But look at Mike Tyson's fight. It was supposed to be 51 days after they announced it, and Roy Jones Jr. was 51 years old. His real name equals 233 in gematria, which is the 51st prime number. If Mike Tyson currently has 50 wins, and it's supposed to be an exhibition fight, so I don't think that counts to his record, but it'd be something like 51 wins if he won, right? So I knew it was important to 51. I figured I'd look up their 51st fights, and look at Roy Jones Jr.'s 51st fight. He lost to Antonio Tarver at the Mandalay Bay Event Center in Nevada, right? Mandalay Bay Event Center, his 51st fight. And what's interesting is the guy that he lost to, he's currently 51 years old. He's going to be 52 now when they fight, which is interesting, but originally he was going to be 51 years old. He lost his 51st fight to this guy, and it was at the Mandalay Bay Event Center. But if you look at Mike Tyson's 51st fight, his 51st fight, it was against Julius Francis. It just so happened to be at the Manchester Arena in England, right? What are the odds? I'm talking about how these two big events happened in the year 2017. Then this fight has synced up to the number 51. And literally, their 51st fights were connected to the Manchester Arena and also to the Las Vegas attack. And even more in regards to the Jesuits, like I said, the Manchester Arena attack was 132 days before the Vegas one. The Catholic Church equals 132, Roman Catholic, so on. It's really big with England and the Queen Elizabeth and, the Church of England that's actually really just a spin-off of the Catholic Church and controlled by the Catholic Church. But if you go from Mike Tyson's birthday to Roy Jones Jr.'s birthday, 201 days, that big Jesuit number. Jason Aldean, 201. Manchester Arena equals 145, like Catholic, and 312. Big number I was talking about, 2017, Pope Francis's full name equals 312. The word Pope equals 312. That's why Kim Jong-un is so important. That's why we had a story about Kim Jong-un possibly being dead on Hitler's birthday this year. 3 months and 12 days after Kim Jong-un's birthday. The Korean War lasted 3 years, 1 month, 2 days, so on. The Manchester Arena thing, I'm talking about Eminem and Nick Cannon earlier. Remember how Nike had sponsored Colin Kaepernick on the date of 9/3? It was important to Saturn. That was also the same day that Roseanne Barr had said she was going to move back to Israel, and Roseanne Barr had got fired, and Roseanne Barr sang the terrible national anthem back in 1991, and the last episode of Roseanne was even called Knee Deep, all kinds of stuff, and I'm just bringing this back up, because the Nick Cannon made the diss track to Eminem right before Eminem released that album where he talked about the Manchester Arena bombing and so on, but let's go back to what I was talking about over here. Kobe Bryant, too. Kobe Bryant. In regards to twin symbolism and this big number with Charles Manson, Kobe Bryant died on the date 26/1 this year, right? 2/6/1. It was synced up to, a ton of other things. Coronavirus with his crown tattoo being buried in Corona Del Mar, and LeBron James equals 261, and it was the day after LeBron James had broke Kobe Bryant's record and then ran down and stood on the snake on the court. Kobe's nickname's the Black Mamba. I mean, it just never fails, but let's move on to the last thing I'm going to talk about. I want to stay on topic with Charles Manson because it's really, really important to this year, and I feel like today's going to be a special day, I think. Well, I wonder what the news stories are going to be, but Marilyn Manson just released a new song, too, and he's going to be releasing a new album. If you look up Marilyn Manson. Charles Manson, I just learned this from Zenith of the Alphas channel. Charles Manson actually wrote Marilyn Manson a letter while he was in jail, and he even writes Corona, 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 and the letter makes no sense whatsoever, but he makes sure to write Corona, Corona, Corona in there, And Marilyn Manson's releasing this new album called We Are Chaos, with the new single called We Are Chaos. And what's interesting is that the new single was released on 7/29 this year, which was International Tiger Day. It was also the day NASA was established, but it also was the Jewish Remembrance Day of the destruction of the two temples called Tisha B'Av. And in Jewish gematria, Tisha B'Av equals 911, and it happens on the 9th day of the 11th month of the Hebrew civil calendar. And think about 9/11, right? And the Twin Towers, the two temples, the Twin Towers. This is also why the Houston Rockets are important, because the last time they won, they had Hakeem Olajuwon, who was one of the Twin Towers. So, just saying, that's part of his nickname and so on. But it's also connected to the Blazers with Clyde Drexler going to the Houston Rockets and a bunch of other things. But Notice this album, though. So, the single releases on July 29th, Tisha B'Av this year. The album's coming out on 9/11. What are the odds, you know? Marilyn Manson obviously knows about this knowledge. His last album in 2017 was called Heaven Upside Down, you know, in reference to Hermeticism and As Above, So Below. And he has a song called Say 10 on that album. Like, literally this. Say 10. And the main line of the song is, you say God, and I say 10. He's talking about the number. And look what Satan equals. Satan equals 10, and God equals 10 in reverse, right? What are the odds? They both equal 55 as well. Think about 55. 5 plus 5 equals 10. You know, that's something I just noticed. I literally just noticed this right now as I'm making this video. Let me find that Marilyn Manson thing. I'm reading down here. It says, the band released their cover version of the Doors song The End on streaming music service on November 22nd, 2019. The track was recorded for the upcoming miniseries The Stand, based on Stephen King's novel. Well, if you've ever watched The Stand is that movie, or the book, I guess, read the book. It's literally about a killer virus and whatever, you know? The Stand. Hold on, I'm gonna look this up really quick. What the heck? Video's already long enough. We are chaos. And think about The Stand. Remember how I said that it's important to the Stephen King novel Stand By Me as well? Or the movie Stand By Me that was based on a Stephen King novel? And then in this thing about this album, they're talking about, you know, The Stand, the movie that's about a killer virus. Also November 22nd, it's the day that JFK was assassinated. I should point out, too, that the song Helter, Skelter, it just so happened to come out on the date of November 22nd, too. Helter, Skelter, let me find the song. Just want to point it out here. November 22nd, 1968, right? So exactly 5 years after JFK dies, Helter Skelter comes out. I mean, what are the odds? They planned this out, The Stand, to come out before coronavirus was even known. November 22nd, he made this song for The Stand. It's just like when Donald Trump, you know, was announced, elected as president on the anniversary of the Berlin Wall coming down, and then LeBron James was in the TV show called The Wall, and they released the movie called The Wall on the 48th day of the year right after he became the president. And I mean, are you kidding me? Just like the new Netflix series called 13 Reasons, how the filming ended in December 2019, and the series came out on Netflix on like the date of 6/5, I think it was, which is interesting because, you know, George Floyd equals 65, and Breonna Taylor was born on 6/5, and she died 282 days after her birthday, syncing up to Charles Manson. And she also died on 3/13, which is the 65th prime number, but in that series, they talked about the police state, and they had a huge race war, and everything else. What are the odds of that? When they stopped filming it in December, it's not a coincidence. They knew all this stuff was going to go down. It's just so ridiculous, but the people eat it up and believe it all. But Stephen King, too, I know I documented about him earlier for something else. I want to look at his name really quick. I know his name was important in gematria. Maybe it was 261. Yeah, his name 261. You know, what are the odds? Charles Manson synced up to that. Marilyn Manson synced up to that. I'll have to look more into this when I get a chance. But Marilyn Manson, you know, in 2017, his tour began on the anniversary of the moon landing, and it was important to Stoneman Douglas, because he's from Fort Lauderdale, an area by Stoneman Douglas, and Stoneman Douglas was synced up to David Bowie, and David Bowie was literally the Marilyn Manson's biggest influence. If you listen to this song, We Are Chaos, you could totally tell that Marilyn Manson's trying to do some type of David Bowie type thing to it, so just craziness, you know? But Marilyn Manson also important to the band Slipknot, which that's the whole point of, you know, what I was trying to get to here. But so the other day, I don't know what day it was. It was probably like August 21st or something. Zenith of the Alpha had made a video, and he asked me if I had heard of this, right? He said it was brought to my attention that Slipknot misspelled gematria for an entire video and so on. And it literally says Gemaria, the killing name. And I didn't know what he was talking about at first, but if you go to the Slipknot YouTube and you click on this video, Slipknot Gematria, the killing name, in the picture here, they forgot to put the T in there. It says Gemaria, the killing name. And, you know, I thought it was interesting right away because when you type out Gematria or Gemaria, the killing name, in Gematria, it equals 194. And another thing I thought was interesting right away was that if you look up the album All Hope Is Gone, it came out on the date of August 20th. Let me find it here. It came out on August 20th of 2010, or 2008. And then Paul Gray, the guy who is known as the Pig in Slipknot, and the guy who, you know, his name equals 38. He died at the age of 38. The Pig equals 38. Gematria equals 38. Kabbalah equals 38. Wikipedia still shows that he died in Johnston, Iowa, even though he didn't die in Johnston, Iowa. But Johnston equals 38. Johnston, Iowa equals 163, which is the 38th prime number. He died in the hotel room 431, which is the 83rd prime number. The reflection of 38. The word murder equals 38. And 83, and so on. And he was also known as the number 2 in the band, and Gematria, the killing name on the album All Hope Is Gone, just so happens to be track number 2. And he's the only person who's died, synced up to the Pig, synced up to Charles Manson. And anyway, let's look at this. August 20th, Paul Gray died on 5/24/2010. When you look it up, it just so happens to be 1 year, 9 months, and 4 days. So how interesting that they would screw that up, right? And what's even more interesting, so gotta find this post here. Slipknot decided to put this video on YouTube on November 12th, 2014. You know, Charles Manson's birthday, November 12th, 2014. And if you go from this date, let's see here. This year with a leap year, or, you know, a span of days, it just so happens to be 194 days. Well, I'll put the wrong year in. This is supposed to be 2020. Look at that. 194 days. And even if you went from 2014, it would be a span of 194 days, right? So synced up to Paul Gray like no other, that they messed up Gemaria, the killing name, and the song Gematria, the killing name, is in total reference of Paul Gray, the Pig, dying. Think about Marilyn Manson, pigs. Think about Francis Bacon and pigs, and the Francis Bacon Gematria, and so on. I also pointed out that a capital T equals 46 in Francis Bacon, just like how Slipknot equals 46, just like how Paul Gray died 46 days after his birthday, and also a lowercase t equals 100 in Jewish gematria, just like Slipknot equals 100, and the word gematria also equals 100 in Francis Bacon. So, you know, they omitted this t for an absolute reason, all synced up. But anyway, so I write about all this, and the next day, actually, after I wrote about all this, I went to the bar in town, and there was barely anybody there, and then these couple young kids came in, and this one kid asked me about the band, the Toadies. He's like, if you're old and you don't know the Toadies, then you don't know anything, right? And I was like, dude, I love the Toadies. They're like one of my favorite bands. And then we played a bunch of Toadies and whatever, Then we were talking about music, and I brought up the fact that the Red Hot Chili Peppers are one of them bands who, their old stuff just sounded so much different than when they got real popular, you know? Their old stuff was like just weird, and it's just so much different. And we talked about this, and the next day I wake up and I see that the guy from the Red Hot Chili Peppers, the guy who played with a lot of their old stuff, he died, and I can't remember what his name was here. Jack Sherman, but if you write his name out in gematria, it equaled 194. And I thought it was interesting because it was right next to this story about a 194-year-old tree. You know, what are the odds of that? 194, the day after I'm talking about all these 194s connected, and I remember going to bed this night thinking about 194, and I was like, dude, I know I've seen 194 before, and I know it's something really important I've been documenting about, I can't figure it out. And then it came to me that Charles Manson equals 194 in Francis Bacon gematria. What's even funnier is this story right here, right above it. I clicked on this story too because I was just curious who the YouTube star was. When you click on that story, it just so happened to be JoJo Siwa. Let me show you here. It was a story of JoJo Siwa, who, interestingly, last year I went and saw in concert at Baxter Arena in Omaha, and because I took my daughter there or whatever, and it was right around the time of Tisha B'Av, and her next show just so happened to be at the Mandalay Bay Center in Las Vegas, or she played there on Tisha B'Av, that's what it was. She played at the Mandalay Bay Event Center on Tisha B'Av that year, but notice her name equaled 102, and I just talked about Mariah Carey and Helter, Skelter, and how she is synced up to Charles Manson. So there's no way they put that story there on purpose, you know, because it's synced up to this Charles Manson narrative. And this gay guy that does makeup with her or whatever, his name equals the same as her too. Jamal Charles, 114, JoJo Siwa, 114. And remember how I documented her with Nick Cannon, and they were on some show called Lip Sync Shorties. And what's funny is I wrote it in here wrong when I blogged about that back in December, because it's actually Lip Sync Battle Shorties. And what's funny is if you write out Lip Sync Shorties, it equals 194. What are the odds of that, you know? And then Nick Cannon equaled 194. Charles Manson equaled 194. So, no doubt they put these stories together, right? So I would see them or whatever. It just worked out that way. Somehow I noticed this pattern that existed with them. But in regards to Slipknot, I was like, I wonder if Slipknot has like a song about Charles Manson or something, you know? And let me find it here. I just typed in like Slipknot Charles Manson. Turns out that Slipknot's very first song on their very first album, it's this song right here with a bunch of numbers in it. And they say it really fast. I always wondered what it said. I had no idea what it said. I knew it said something about sick because the next track is called Sick, S-I-C. And I had no idea what it says. But it literally says the whole thing, I think it's sick. And what they did was they took a Charles Manson documentary and somebody talking about the Charles Manson murders, and they said, the whole thing, I think it's sick, and they sped it up. And that's what the whole intro to their album is. The whole thing, I think it's sick. The whole thing, I think it's sick, or whatever, right? So what are the odds? What are the odds of that? And then last year, just before Tisha B'Av, on August 9th, the anniversary of the Tate murders, Slipknot releases their album. Even more interesting, Slipknot was on Slipknot, the Clown's daughter, Gabrielle Crahan, or however you pronounce it, Crahan, or whatever. She died on the date of 5/16. That's Janet Jackson's birthday. That was a really big number I was talking about in connection to a lot of this last year. Paul Gray also died 194 days after Charles. I talked about that. Never mind. Duh. But, so anyway, I also pointed out that Lori Loughlin was in the news this same day. And that's interesting because Zenith of the Alpha pointed out to me a long time ago that Lori Loughlin, she's famous for Full House, but the guy who created Full House is Jeff Franklin. And Jeff Franklin just so happens to be the guy who owns the house where the Sharon Tate murders happened. Like, the house got demolished, but the new house that's built there, that's Cielo Drive, he owns the house that's built there, right? So, what are the odds? Lori Loughlin in the news, and let me see, there was one other thing. Eminem was also in the news. Somebody had death hoaxed Eminem, right? R.I.P. Eminem was in the news. And once again, think about how Eminem was synced up to Nick Cannon and so on. So I know that's important. But as I was writing up this blog post, I stopped and looked at the TV, and my DirecTV, whenever it stops, it starts doing ads or whatever if you don't turn it on for so long. I look up and I see Charles Manson. I'm like, what are the odds? Charles Manson. So I took a picture of that. Apparently there's some new show called Helter, Skelter, an American Myth that's on Epix, I think. Epix, however you say it. Then I went to Yahoo. Yahoo was running a story about Rose McGowan, calling Alyssa Milano a fraud. Rose McGowan. They just announced they're going to bring back or Who's the Boss, right, with Alyssa Milano and Tony Danza and so on. But Rose McGowan used to be Marilyn Manson's ex-girlfriend, and Rose McGowan was important to the Me Too movement just before Charles Manson died that I talked about. I don't know. There's just something important to Iowa. Remember last year I talked about how Iowa was important to China, and then on Tisha B'Av, the biggest story was the Hong Kong riots, and then talked about how that's important to Kobe Bryant and important to the Houston Rockets, and then Donald Trump went to Houston and they announced they were going to play the first NBA games in India. Then Daryl Morey, the Houston Rockets general manager, tweeted about China, and then they broke their ties with China. And think about Yao Ming, the Chinese basketball player who played for the Houston Rockets. And then South Park did the whole Mexican Joker episode, and then the next one, or the one was synced up to China or whatever. LeBron James and Will Barton and James Harden are all on the airplane when they go to China, and that was important to the Batman movie where they showed Aurora in the previews before the Batman shooting that happened in Aurora. But Iowa was important to China because Terry Branstad, the former governor of Iowa, is now the ambassador to China for the United States and so on. Iowa is also the state that is the leading producer of pigs, right? Notice if you go from Marilyn Manson's birthday to the day of the Tate murders, Marilyn Manson was born in the same year. He was born 7 months and 4 days before, which is interesting for a number of reasons, because Charles Manson equals 74. Gematria equals 74. Paul Dedrick Gray of Slipknot, his name equals 74. Corey Todd Taylor of Slipknot, his name equals 74. They come out of Des Moines, Iowa. Des Moines, Iowa equals 74. The word killing equals 74. Gematria is the killing name. Slipknot also wears masks. Think about coronavirus and masks. Coronavirus equals 142. New Year's Eve equals 100, or we'll see. What's New Year's Eve equal? New Year's Eve. It does equal 142. Charles Manson equals 142. And it's interesting because Charles Manson first used Helter Skelter on New Year's Eve. And New Year's Eve is also when they reported about coronavirus originally, right? New Year's Eve, so that's also the day that I discovered the Charles Manson narrative with Mariah Carey, so. Paul Gray's birthday was 7 months and 4 days before Charles Manson's birthday. Corey Taylor shares a birthday with Dwight Howard, who's important to the Los Angeles Lakers. Dwight Howard, the curse of Kobe Bryant. Kobe tears his Achilles when Dwight Howard's on the team. Then Dwight Howard joins the team again, then Kobe dies, supposedly. kinds of crazy stuff here. There's one other thing I was going to talk about up here. Roman Polanski, he was in the news earlier this year with 194 too. Roman Polanski, he won a Caesar in, I think it was France or wherever he lives now. It's kind of like the Oscars or whatever, but he won the Caesars, or a Caesar, and it was 194 days after his birthday. And the Caesars equal 194 in Francis Bacon gematria. Roman Polanski's birthday was also August 18th, and I know that was important for some reason. Let me find it here. Somebody else's birthday was August 18th that was synced up to Roman Polanski. I can't even remember. Anyway, I'm about done with it. Whatever, you get the point. It's a long video. But I really just wanted to get this Charles Manson narrative. It's absolutely important to what's going on. You can come and read my stuff on my blog if you want, and so on, but there was a story of Reggie, or it wasn't a story, I was just watching the NBA games, and I kept noticing they kept giving me a commercial with Reggie Miller on it, and Reggie Miller, it's a Wendy's commercial, right, connected to Twins, but Reggie Miller, he makes sure to tell us that he scored 8 points in 9 seconds on that commercial, and if you look it up, it's actually he scored 8 points in 8.9 seconds, right? But think about 8-9, the Tate murders, and so on. And when he did this, he scored the 8 points in 9 seconds. It was in the 1995 NBA playoffs over the New York Knicks. And, you know, that was the Rockets won the NBA Finals that year, but the previous year they beat the Knicks, and the Knicks had Patrick Ewing, who went to Georgetown University, right, the Jesuit University, and I heard him mention Patrick Ewing in one of the NBA games too. They put emphasis on Patrick Ewing in one of them games, and I'm just mentioning this, I guess, because, you know, the Rockets won over the Knicks, and they had Patrick Ewing, and it was interesting because Hakeem Olajuwon was on the Houston Rockets that year, and he got his revenge from the 1985 college basketball championship where Patrick Ewing beat his Houston team, and then he left Houston, and he went to the Houston Rockets and joined Ralph Sampson, and they became the Twin Towers, right? Twin symbolism, Twin Towers, and so on. So, but it's also interesting, Reggie Miller is known for the Indiana Pacers, and Steven Jackson, who was George Floyd's twin, he also was an Indiana Pacer. Let me point it out really quick. Steven Jackson played a good portion of his career. Well, maybe, I guess, 2004 to 2007. I remember him most for playing with the Indiana Pacers, at least. So, I think he played with Reggie Miller even. Let me look really quick. But Reggie Miller's birthday is on Mamba Day. Even better. When did Reggie Miller retire? 2005. So yeah, Steven Jackson even played with Reggie Miller. And, you know, Indiana Pacers 114, LeBron James 114. King James equals 89, like the 8 points in 9 seconds. Religion 89. Some other random things too. NBA bubble equals 286 in Francis Bacon. Orlando, Florida equals 286 in Francis Bacon. Right, what are the odds? These Francis Bacon ciphers are super duper important. Walt Disney World equals 282 in Francis Bacon, just like Charles Manson. Just like how the NBA resumed 282 days after it originally began. Just like how George Floyd was killed 2 years, 8 months, 2 days after Donald Trump called out the kneeling. Children of the Corn equals 282. They also just sentenced the Golden State Killer, right? And he's 74. Just think about Charles Manson and murder and the Golden State Killer, and so on, right? So we'll leave it at that. It's long enough. Like I said, it's hard to come back. It's so detailed, and if I would have been making videos, it would have been easier, but there's something real important to this umbrella symbolism, too, and how it syncs up, once again, to the year 2017, or the very tail end of 2016, when Zach made the All for Truth website, and the logo was the umbrella, and then like a week later, the Umbrella Man YouTube channel told him to watch out on Christmas Eve, and then a car crashed into his house, and then my uncle died a few weeks after that in a weird car crash, and this was just after I learned about the Charles Manson narrative, or I discovered that it was probably a pattern, and, you know, same day my uncle dies, I get a letter with $300 in the mail. It was express ship telling me not to make videos anymore, basically. Then the Umbrella Man makes a video in connection to my uncle dying, and also in connection to my birthday. And then I had synchronicity with the gematria effect of this lady calling in, talking about her pet pigs. Don't want to re-explain it all, but there's something very important to it. And JFK was important to the Charles Manson stuff, and JFK had the original Umbrella Man, and George Floyd, they had the guy holding the umbrella breaking out the windows. Big time important. Elon Musk was born on the same day that Zach's YouTube channel got deleted, which was the 186th day of the year. And it was the day leaving 186 days, and Zach's car crash I can't remember. The car crash happened 186 days before they deleted his YouTube channel. Then he made another gematria effect on the 186th day of the year, then waited like 2 weeks before he made another one. Zach Hubbard equals 186 in Francis Bacon gematria, and a number of other things. And I'm not saying that Zach's a bad person. I'm just saying that it's connected to him in some crazy way, and how it all syncs up. So there's even a pirate theme that I'm talking about recently, with Orlando Bloom was in the news about his dog dying, and Johnny Depp was also in the news with Amber Heard, and I just saw that Amber Heard's going to be one of the stars in that Stand movie, and I watched the Pirates of the Caribbean because of that, and also because the Super Bowl being in Tampa Bay and Tom Brady being in Tampa Bay and Las Vegas, it's synced up to the Pirate Bowl that was in 2002, and I watched Pirates of the Caribbean, though. It opens up with a scene with the umbrella floating towards the boat. So there's a lot more that's going on with it. But maybe I'll make another video when I get a chance. But I even had crazy synchronicity with an Arnold Palmer tee. I never noticed that it had an umbrella on it one day. And I was like thinking about umbrellas, and I looked at this tee, and I was like, well, it has an umbrella on it. And then I talked about how it's synced up to the golf tournament. Somebody told me the Travelers tournament, they use the umbrella at every hole and so on. And, of course, Dustin Johnson won, and it was exactly connected to everything I was talking about. And this year we got the 84th Masters coming up, and golf was suspended 8 months and 4 days before the 84th Masters is going to happen. And the 84th Masters begins on Charles Manson's birthday. And so there's a lot going on with it, but like I said, leave the video there. Hopefully I'll make more videos here, but have a good one. Hopefully this webcam thing or this new microphone thing I bought works too, but done rambling. Have a good one. Peace.